Kip, what's up, man? Great to see you. Glad to be back on the podcast.
Yeah, and congratulations on the hunt, man. That's
Thank
so
you.
awesome.
Yeah. By the time this is released, that'll be a couple of weeks ago that we will have
Yeah.
successfully completed our moose hunt. But yeah, we brought it down to the wire. Uh, we passed on a smaller bull moose on a Tuesday because we had seen so much action on Monday and Tuesday. So we're like, we'll be
Yeah.
fine. And then even on Wednesday morning, we saw a really small bull running with the cow before shooting light. It's just running on the road, but it was before shooting light.
Mm.
So we're like, we'll be fine, no problem. And then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we saw maybe four cows, no bulls. So Brecken and I were like, oh man, like we're not we're not going to see anything. We should have shot that bull on Tuesday, and then Saturday it all came together. I actually had Brecken on the podcast. We recorded this morning, but by the time you're listening to this, last week's podcast was with Brecken on the actual hunt itself. So we got it done on Saturday. That was the last day, and it was a really cool adventure.
Yeah. I was nervous for you when you're like, because I was like, when you first posted a picture of the first bull, I was like, congrats. And then you're like, we passed that one. I thought, oh,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
my personality is like, this is our only chance. Go.
Well, that
So
so that
I'm
first
glad it
day,
worked out.
we are too. That first day was the first moose that I posted was pretty decent actually.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Brecken wasn't there with me. He had a football game that day.
Oh,
So
so
yeah,
that even makes more sense to wait.
right.
Yeah.
He said, if you're gonna shoot a state record, shoot it. But if it's anything else, don't. So I
Wait for
passed on
me.
that
Yeah.
one. And then on Tuesday, we passed on one together. So we passed up two bulls that we could have shot easily. And
Yeah.
finally we got the third time was a charm. So it worked out.
Cool, man. Cool,
Yeah.
cool, cool.
So last week we did a different Ask Me Anything. We released the recording from our live event. So guys, this week it's more like your traditional Ask Me Anything, where we're fielding questions from members of our exclusive brotherhood, the Iron Council. So uh, here we go. Let's get after it.
Yeah. To learn more about the IC, go to orderofman.com/Iron Council. First question, Alex Johnson. We are expecting our first child, and I'm beyond excited and, of course, a bundle of nerves. What are some things that you guys did, that you did or wish you had done to prepare yourselves for fatherhood? By the way, the IC is an absolute blessing at this time, and I am grateful to have it.
Well, one of the things that I think is useful that you actually hit on is having other men in your corner who are fathers who have gone through it before. And one of the
Yeah.
beautiful things about the Iron Council is we have individual channels, and one of them is a fatherhood channel. So if you're not in that fatherhood channel, make sure you're there because you can ask questions like these and get feedback from the guys and really cater your experience in the Iron Council. So having men in your corner who have gone through it before is invaluable. Also, I would suggest that you look into or at least consider or have the mindset that your job is to put yourself out of a job. And I don't mean that you're never going to be needed
Yeah.
or never wanted or never be around when they graduate or anything like that, but that you're not raising a child, that you're raising an adult, somebody who's going to go out into the workforce, go out into the world and be self sustaining, contribute more than they take out or take away from environments and situations. And I think if you have that mindset, you're going to do things differently than if you're trying to baby and coddle and bubble wrap and shelter this little child not to grow up or not to contribute to society. But I would say even different than the fatherhood thing, you're going to get that down, and there's nothing you can do to be
Yeah.
completely ready for it. You're going to learn along the way, be open, learn to say sorry, talk to your kids about when you screw up, and you will screw up. But I would also say, in addition to those things, make sure that you're taking care of yourself and also make sure that you're taking care of your wife
Yeah.
because
Don't stop doing that.
it's very easy to, at least for me, it was very easy to lose myself in what was going on and then forget that my wife needs time and attention and energy. And she's got this child that she's caring for. And then she's got me as maybe an adult child at times that she's worried about. So help, do what you can. And I wish I would have done a better job at this, but support around the house, support with logistical planning, support with even if she's a stay-at-home mom, for example, the doing chores or errands, things that need to be done for the household, so that she can have time to be able to rest and relax and recover because she's got a lot going on too, obviously, clearly, more than you do.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, the only thing that comes to mind is just take advantage of it, enjoy it. I mean, this is such an old guy to say, but like I saw a video of our youngest boy when he was like a few months old the other day, and it's like I miss it,
Mm,
and that time's gone. So just be present and embrace it and try to enjoy it, and don't let work and these other things like overshadow the importance of the time that you have,
right.
because you won't have that time again with those kids. So,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
all right, Frederick Butcher or Bocher, a friend called and told me he's separated from his wife right now. He said that they are planning on reconciliation. Sorry. In the course of our conversation, I told him to read no more Mr. Nice Guy. Then I thought sovereignty would be good. I posted to my battle team about someone recommended on F Yourself. What books would you guys recommend?
Yeah, I think those are all really good books. I've read all of them.
Yeah.
I would also read another one to add there is Wild at Heart by John Eldridge because it helps you
Mm.
understand masculinity and manliness. That book was instrumental in my life. So I don't know if I'd give you a better list of books necessarily. Extreme
I
Ownership, if you
know.
haven't read that, because there's clearly a lot of things that have broken down in the relationship, and a lot of it is your fault or your friend's fault, and a lot of it is his wife's fault. It goes both ways. It takes two to tango, but there's only
Yep.
one person that your friend can take responsibility for, and that's himself. And when you change, people respond negatively and positively. If you change for the worse, people are going to respond negatively. If you change for the better, people are going to respond positively. Now, it doesn't mean things are going to happen the way that you want. It doesn't always mean just because you're changing and trying to get better and improve that there is going to be reconciliation or that you are going to get what you want from other people. They have a say in the matter, but your life, that's the only play that you have, really.
You
Because what's
do.
the
You do.
alternative? Is just to continue to do what you're currently doing and hope by some miracle something works out. Well, you might as well improve. And if you improve, either she'll respond to that and you guys will be able to reconcile, or your friend and his wife will, or maybe she won't. And down the road, whether it's 2 years or 5 years or 10 years or whatever it might be, when he's in another relationship, he's going to be better for it. And that relationship is going to be better because he took the right path, which is responsibility. I mean, you've been through it, Kip.
Yeah.
You and I have had a lot of
Totally.
conversations about this. When you took responsibility, that's when things began to change for you.
Totally. Totally.
And you didn't
Well,
reconcile
and
with your wife. So, but
no,
but things worked out, right? Very, very nicely, I
totally.
might say, from my perspective,
Totally.
anyways.
Well, and it's interesting because you were saying what's the alternative, but what we also hold on to is this idea, well, I'm going to show up in a way that will manipulate and try to coerce and change, the other individual, but that's not the right type of change you want anyway. Right? Like,
Yeah, for sure.
there's certain things that I could possibly do to get my wife to show up differently, but then she's going to resent me. She's going to despise me. Like, you don't even want that type anyway. Right? And so even if you are able to pull off some, you know, change on their behalf, that's not the change that you typically want, because they
Yeah.
they got to make those decisions on their own, and that's just going to be from a more powerful position.
Well, there's a lot in a relationship that you could do. You think about, even, I don't know what your financial situation is, but if you're a primary breadwinner, you could hold that little money chip, that money card over her. Hey, I got the money, so you got to stick around. Okay, well, you might get some compliance in that, right?
Yeah.
But do you have commitment? No, you don't. And it
Yeah.
will it will be okay for a little while, and then you'll go back into old
Short
patterns,
game.
and there's more resentment, like you were saying, and then it'll only get worse and worse and worse. So yeah, that manipulation's a hard one. That's actually one I fall into quite a bit, and I don't even realize I'm doing it. That's the trick, is you don't even realize you're doing it, but you really have
Totally.
to. I say you, but I really have to dig deeper into my motives of why I show up the way I do. Like, am I saying this thing to my wife or to my children or even to you guys listening because it's the right thing to say and the right thing to do and the right mindset or what I truly believe? Or am I saying it so that I'll elicit some sort of reaction or response from you that I've already predetermined what it quote unquote should be.
Totally.
It's hard to spot.
Totally.
It's really, really hard to spot, but it is there. And you got to be really careful of that. I think the best thing to do, this doesn't even answer the question because you're just asking about books, but I think the best thing to do, not just with relationships, but life, is doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do, and then letting the chips fall where they may. And that
Yeah.
sucks because the chips falling where they may don't always fall where you want them to.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Yeah. That's where I always, we've had conversations in the past about Green's book, 48 Laws of Power, right? And people lose their crap over it because like this book's so manipulative. And my stance on that has always been like, you don't think you're doing the majority of these things all the time anyway.
Might
Like
as well recognize what's happening.
Anyone, exactly. Anyone that reads that book and goes, "Oh, this is so wrong," and doesn't internalize and realize they're actually doing a lot of those things subconsciously is a fool. Because we're doing those things all the time.
All the time.
So it's really good to know, how human nature is, right, and how you show up and in some of those things that we naturally kind of do.
I think a good litmus test to know if you're manipulating other people or not is to ask yourself if you would do or say the same thing if you got the exact opposite response of what you wanted.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that.
So take this situation with your wife. Would you do what you're doing right now, whether it's trying to beg or plead or whatever you're doing? Would you do it right now if you knew with 100% certainty that she was leaving tomorrow? If the answer is I would still do that, then you're probably not being manipulative. That's probably actually you.
Yeah. Yeah. But if you change your tune,
then
you're just playing the game.
Right. Which, I mean, there is something to be said for that in some cases, but you can't lose yourself in the moment. I think about maybe it's a client relationship and a client wants you to bump them ahead of other people. Well, depending on the client and the thing,
and
like,
the relationship,
there might be reasons to do that. And I don't think that sacrifices your boundaries or who you actually are as a person. If it's changing that, that's a problem. But there are some reasons why you would do some of those things. So it's not a hard and fast rule. It's just a good litmus test to see where you stand.
Totally. Totally. You know what? The original question was books. The 5 love languages.
Right.
I would add to the list.
Yep.
And then one other book that comes to mind that I think was profound for me was, I think it's called Letting Go. I'll look it up here and confirm the author. But really it's premised on the idea that, like, how do I say this? There was a major breakthrough for me during my divorce when I went from this kind of manipulation and what I wanted versus what she wanted versus just letting go and wishing the best for her, agnostic of how it benefited me.
Right.
And once I got to that point, it was like, you know what? I could actually love her. And it wasn't about what I was going to benefit from. And it really allowed me to get pure in my intent.
I like that. Is it Letting Go, The Pathway of Surrender by David Hawkins?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Old book.
So there it is. I haven't read that one. I'm very interested in that. It says a powerful mechanism to help you surrender anything holding you back on your path to enlightenment and find fulfillment, truth, and spiritual growth. And it says here, the primary aim was, during his psychiatric practice, the author's primary aim was to seek the most effective ways to relieve human suffering in all of its many forms. The inner mechanism of surrender was found to be of great practical benefit and is described in this book. And then it goes on a little bit more. The mechanism of surrender. It's interesting.
And I don't remember if it actually even has to do, like he even talks about divorce or marriage or anything, but that's kind of what I got out of it was there's power in just things are what they are, right? And actually just let go and deal in reality, right? It's just like John Gary Bishop, right? When he talks about expectations, right? Is like deal in reality, let go of those expectations of what should or should not be. Kind of that same concept.
Yeah.
All right.
I like it.
Chris Davis. I lost my dad Tuesday. Sorry, Chris.
Rough.
He was 83 and suffered from dementia for several years. Fortunately, he died in his sleep after having a nice dinner and taking a nap in his favorite chair. I know Ryan lost his dad and would like to know he would be able to share anything that helped him get through the loss. Like Ryan, I wasn't able to say goodbye to him.
I don't know if I'm the best person to answer this question, and I'll tell you why. I I tend to be somebody who can bury pretty well, and I did, where it's like the pain of that, and there's a lot of pain. I still have a lot of regret from that. My own personal
Yeah.
regret that I didn't. Uh, I wasn't as good a son as I could have been. And that's to say nothing about the way he showed up as a father, good, bad, and different. None of that. It's just I wasn't as good a son as I could be. And I wish I would have been, but now I don't have that opportunity. But man, I don't know. I don't know. I wish I could have a better answer and give you a really good solid answer to what I just say that it takes time, remember the memories that you have, think about those, cry. Like it's okay to cry. It's okay to let and
Yeah.
express those feelings. I think with grief, a lot of us won't. I try not to. I try to bottle it up and not cry and be emotional. And I'm not saying be a blabbering idiot in front of everybody, but maybe just go out into the woods and just cry. You know, Jason Wilson has a great book called Cry Like a Man. And he's somebody I really admire and respect. And there's a lot of positive benefit of letting out negativity and toxicity through tears, actually, and through that process.
Yeah.
So I would say grieve and do that and find the space to be able to do that. um that's it, man. I mean, the hard part about death and loss is it just takes time to get over, and if you're like me, you want it to happen quickly, and it sometimes just doesn't. And I'm sorry
Yeah,
for your loss.
totally. Um, I was listening to Jocko podcast a few years ago. I don't remember the app. If you search like how to deal with loss of life or dealing with the loss of a loved one, you'll find probably a video on YouTube around it. But Jocko explains it like, waves crashing, and sometimes those sets, the time between sets will be, more distance and there'll be
Mm,
more time in between the sets, but you don't determine when those sets come. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And with the loss of my dad earlier this year, it was it was amazing what would trigger.
Mm,
It all it'd have to do is like my son would be like, I got blue eyes like Grandpa Farmer, and I would just
mm,
like start
yeah.
crying. You know what I mean? Or or I actually remember when probably a couple weeks before he died, when I felt like it was like it's probably going to happen. You know what I mean? Um, my kids prayed for him. You know what I mean? And I remember telling my wife like, I'm not ready. I'm not ready for this. And so, um, but I think there's huge value in just focusing on, one, being okay to grief about it, but two, like honor him by knowing him, and one thing that's crossed my mind, and I'd love to take credit for it, but I was at church and then we were talking about genealogy and our ancestors and understanding, and I felt like, well, it was immediate to go like, oh, I should have had these conversations with my dad and blah blah blah. And then I thought, wait a second, how many uncles do I have that are still alive? Like I could call my Uncle Roger and say, hey, let's go to lunch. Can we spend the next hour and just talk about dad and get to know him from the perspective of his little, when they were little, what kind
Mm-hmm.
of guy he was when he was a kid, and I think there's a sense of honor and respect by understanding who he was, whether good, bad, or indifferent, right? And just kind of understanding the individual that he was. And so, anyhow, so that's on my docket, right? To call my Uncle Roger and take him out to lunch and just say, hey, can we just talk about my dad for the next hour? Just so I could get to know him a little bit more in a space that I never, unfortunately, got to know him
Right.
in that way, in
Right.
his childhood and how he showed up in the world. So, but let's find that Jocko podcast. The way he talks about it is really powerful. And I've
Yeah, it's
shared that with a
interesting.
handful of people, and it's beneficial.
Awesome. I like it. Cool.
Greg Eckert, what are your top ways to invest in your company to generate more cash flow? I'm an owner operator of a plumbing company.
Marketing. I mean, that's really I would say marketing, maybe research and development, maybe business acquisition.
Yeah.
I would say those are the three areas. So if you can learn to market better or run Facebook ads better or implement a new element of marketing, that's going to generate revenue for you for sure, especially if you're not using social media and you learn how to use that effectively, especially he said plumbing.
Yes, sir.
I mean, you could be hilarious in plumbing. Like you could be hilarious. And if you can do that in a funny, hilarious way
Catchy.
and not take yourself
Yeah.
so seriously, social media would blow up for you. Think about Geico, what Geico did to the auto insurance industry. It's like the auto insurance, such a boring thing. And yet
I know.
Geico, I think it was Geico who kind of kicked it off. And now you see Liberty Mutual with the Emu and other companies kind of doing their thing. But it's pretty amazing what they've done from a marketing perspective and think about how much revenue that's generated. The other thing I would say when I said research and development or new products or something is maybe there's some proprietary tool that you've developed or system or procedure that you can do something for maybe half the price or half the time, and you save businesses or households
Efficiently.
or whatever. But
Yeah.
there's if there's something you can develop and then market and brand, that's one. And then the third is going and potentially even buying up smaller plumbing companies that are looking to retire potentially, or they're struggling and they don't know how to run the day-to-day operations, or maybe they're great with the day-to-day operations, actually the plumbing portion of it, but not so good with the business managerial portion of it. And maybe you're really good at that. So you can come in and buy that company, retain those individuals as highly paid employees and consultants. And now you have, an extra $1 million of business revenue or whatever that might look like. So I would say that's where I would invest in a business.
Yeah. And it depends on like why generate more cash flow, right? Is it consistent cash flow? You know what I mean? Or is it all up just more cash flow? I mean, Greg, just a couple things that crossed my mind, and obviously this is not my industry, but like B2B, right? Like is there a play that you could focus on working with landlords in corporate offices, and you're an on-call maintenance and support for multiple office buildings as a plumber, and you get that into a 6-month contract where you have resources on call to provide services on the commercial side, right? Like whenever I think about businesses, I immediately think residential is they're cheap and companies are not. So, is there some play where you could work with different companies and provide plumbing services for them, and then get that into like a monthly contract basis to generate consistent cash flow? I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
Ideas.
Yeah.
So,
I like it.
all right. Richard Bedwell. I am new to the IC and I'm starting to see how far of a road I have before me, and it
Oh,
is
man.
quite daunting. Do you have any recommendations to help me get through this initial shock of thinking so I can continue doing what I know I need to do?
Yeah. You actually don't really have as far to go as you think. You have to get to tomorrow and you have to be a little better tomorrow than you were today. That's it. That's really it. Like, I'd rather you
Yeah.
think about it like that. Cause what are you trying to get to? The analogy I've used is going on a hike and you see a peak and you're like, I want to get to that peak. What happens when you get to that peak? It's usually a false peak. Unless you know the
Another
mountain
ridge.
or right. And so you get to the top, you're like, oh crap, that's the peak. I didn't even see it down from where I was. Right. You didn't have that perspective. But now that you're at a different peak, a different elevation, you have a new perspective of what is possible. So you don't even really know what your final goal is. Nobody does. People say reach your full potential. What does that even mean? Like, when do you know that you've reached your full potential? You never reach it, because it's not like a gas tank where you go to the gas tank and you fill it up and you're on empty and you fill it up and it gets to full and you're like, good, now it's full. No, it's not a gas tank. It's an ever growing gas tank if you want to look at it like that. When you get it to full, then there's a little bit more like the gas tank grows because now you have new skills, new mindsets, new networks, new connections, new investment opportunities, new resources that you can use to invest. And so the gas tank grows. But the reason I bring it up is it seems overwhelming when you have to go to the gas pump and you got to put in $130 worth of gas because you're on empty. That seems overwhelming, especially now with Biden inflation. Okay. That's overwhelming. That's frustrating. But if instead you said, here I am on empty, and really all I need to do is make sure there's an eighth of gas in the tank, and that'll get me by. And then from there, what's next? What's next? What's next? What's next? What's next? So what I would suggest
Yeah.
to you is looking at the 90-day battle plan, which is what we use, and breaking it down into 4 objectives by December. What are the 4 things you want to do? That's not daunting. And
Yeah.
and I'm not telling you what those 4 things are. You decide those for yourself. Maybe it's a 1 on a difficulty level because that's where you're at, or maybe it's a 99 on a difficult level because that's where you're at. I don't know. But just what 4 things can you accomplish over the next 90 days? Maybe there's a course that you want to take, or some sort of devotional course that you want to take on spirituality. And so you can do that. Or maybe you want to do some therapy for the next 90 days. You're like, hey, I've got some anger issues. I've got some resentment issues. I'd like to work through that. And so you hire a therapist, and over 90 days, you have 12 therapy sessions. And that's going to move the needle. Maybe you want to run a marathon in December. That could be your condition objective. Maybe you want to coach a sports team, maybe the basketball team for your kid, for your daughter or your son. You want to coach their team so you can have a deeper connection with them. Okay, you can do that in the next quarter. And then maybe there's a program or a course or an email series or something that you can take on business so that you can grow your business, like the plumber just asked. Maybe there's a Facebook marketing course you can take and learn more about, and so that you know how to hire and who to hire to help you run those ads. You can do that in 90 days. And that's not overwhelming. That's why we do it like that. And then when that time ends, you look at what you accomplished and you look at what you didn't accomplish, and then you recalibrate it. So you're looking at it, and you're like, okay, well, uh, I need to adjust. And so you pivot and you make your adjustments where you need to. So don't get overwhelmed. Just find something that pushes you, but inspires you, but doesn't deflate you because it seems too overwhelming.
Yeah. Derek Kripe, what are some markers that y'all use to know when it's time to part ways with an organization, especially when you're in a leadership role? I led a team of 15 guys recently, left a power line contractor due to what I saw were reconcilable differences between how I needed to lead the team well and how management wanted to squeeze every last cent out of their margins, even if it meant putting these guys in undue risk. My guys are profitable, completing projects with a 20 to 40% profit margin when industry standards are 8 to 15. My guys were safe with no injuries, and the culture where anyone could and would call each other out if an individual is getting lax, or could step back and offer suggestions where we needed to tighten our game. I'm the end I don't know, along with some guys that I have been training to move up, were passed over for a yes men. Ultimately, the company was at odds with its own values and mission statement and asking me to compromise my own values and vision. And I decided the best to move on and down to a different road. I don't regret my decision in the least, but I'm curious if and what kind of parameters y'all have used to know when it's time to part ways.
Yeah, I mean, that was like, you knew what you had to do. And
Yeah.
it sounds like I didn't know you did it already. I was going to say, look,
Yeah.
who are you trying to convince that you need to leave? You trying to convince
Yeah.
yourself, or you trying to convince us? But it sounds like you pulled the trigger on that. Yeah, I mean, a couple general markers. I mean, you saw a lot of writing on the wall that your team was at risk. I don't know what kind of risk. I don't know if it was like personal safety or something, but they were at risk.
Yeah. Probably. I
Like,
mean, if they're linemen, probably safety
yeah,
risk, right? With them
right.
working too hard. Yeah.
So that's definitely a term that I wouldn't. I mean, and that's the thing I would suggest to you is come up with your terms. Like, what is it that
Yeah.
where is the line? Well, the line is, I'm not going to put my guys at unnecessary risk, and if they step over that line, then I'm going to quit.
Yeah.
Okay, like, figure that out right now. If it compromises integrity, maybe it's financial integrity. You mentioned that a little bit. Is that a term? Is that a hard and fast rule? If it is, then that's where it needs to be. Another term that I would have is when I'm no longer interested in it. If I'm no longer interested in doing the thing, life's too short. And I'm not saying like the day-to-day operations. Sometimes, like, I don't want to send some emails. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about your heart is no longer in the thing. That would be a rule. Another rule, and I actually think that this would fall into line with personal safety, especially in your line of work, is if you're not qualified to do the job, don't do the job. Right? Like, if you don't have the qualifications to do it, then you should not be doing that job, especially if it's going to put other people at physical risk. But at the root of what I'm saying is figure out what your baseline terms are now today, and then know what the consequences of stepping over those terms are. It may be quit, termination, but you need to figure
Yeah.
that out now. You need to decide what that is. But those are markers that I would use: integrity
Totally.
issues, personal safety issues. My heart's no longer in it, and if I genuinely am not qualified to do the work.
Yeah, totally. And I think the only thing I'd add is like when your heart's not in it, I mean, maybe you might need to break that down a little bit, right? It's like what do I need autonomy in my job, right? Or do I don't feel like I'm getting the support I need. Like get clear on what a fulfillment looks like. If you hop online, you do a search for intrinsic motivators or intrinsic needs, you'll kind of get a feel of what I call your corporate love language is,
Mm-hmm.
and see if that's available to you in that environment. And it just may not be a good fit, right? If Ryan, if you were a micromanager and I'm helping you in the IC, I'd probably be like, yeah, you know what? I love what we're doing here. I love everything, but this is just not how I operate, right? And you might
Mm-hmm.
be like, well, Kip, this is how I operate. Okay, well, then that's okay. It's not a good fit for us. And so, but get kind of clear on what that looks like as well, because it might be a little bit more soft where people find fulfillment in their jobs. And those would be your intrinsic needs or quote unquote intrinsic motivators.
I like that. I would also say that if you don't have what you want, you're in a job and you don't have what you want, don't just walk.
Yeah. Ask for it. Yeah.
Ask for it or build it
Yeah.
or develop it or create it. There's opportunities there. And maybe you could be
Totally.
that guy for catalyst for change. Do that first before you just walk. Because a lot of times people are,
Yeah.
oh, my boss is an asshole. Well, did you talk to him about the issues you had? No, he wouldn't understand. He this, he that. But yeah, but did you do anything about it? No, he would never allow that. Okay. Like you're presuming it's just not a manly behavior. It really is.
Totally.
And I'm not suggesting that I don't know who asked the question. I'm not suggesting he's not being manly because I don't know if he's done those things. But when people just walk and quit and throw in the towel before they even ask and assert themselves, yeah, I don't think that's a great way to behave.
Yeah,
Now,
for
if you've
sure.
asked and you've tried and you've poured resources and time and energy and attention into something and it's not panning out, okay, well, yeah, at some point, but I think you should try those things first.
Yeah. Adam Lewis, Ryan, what are your thoughts on the main event of how it went and the hunt? Maybe you
Well,
want to
the
save
main,
the hunt for the next app. I don't know.
yeah, I mean, you can go
Or
back and
you already
listen.
talked about the hunt. Yeah.
Yeah, with my son Brecken, but yeah, the main event went great. You know what was really good about it is, I know a lot of people know that I've just had some personal issues that I'm going with through right now, and I've been kind of struggling, and um, that's been a challenge. And at some point, I'll talk about some of those things. But the reason I even bring that up right now is because I realized how incredible you and Jay and Cameron and Chris, and I hesitate to name names because I always forget people, but how incredible our leadership team is with Order of Man
Mm,
and the Iron Council. It's so incredible. Even in
yeah.
where I am working through some personal things, it's like, man, you guys just stepped up in such a great way. And I don't think we skipped a beat. In fact, I think it was better. We implemented some new things. We did some different things that we hadn't done before. And I guess the litmus test is not whether or not I thought it was a good event. The litmus test is whether or not the guys thought it was a good event. And I hope that they did. Their after action reviews that they sent to us said that they did. And I hope that's the case, So,
Yeah.
and then go listen to the hunt.
Yeah. Trenton Mangrum, what do you do to stay organized in business and in life? I always feel I am forgetting something or someone.
Okay, so I'll answer that question by telling you that you need to ask better questions. So let me tell you what I mean by that. It's such a broad question that it's impossible to organize the question or the response
Mm,
to it. Like I cannot formulate a response. I mean, I can, and I'm going to try here in a minute, but
yeah.
I could be way off because it's so broad. What do you do to be organized in life? What
What
do,
do you
what
mean?
are, what are you,
Yeah.
what are you talking about? Okay. So I'm answering the
Have
question
you
like
used the
that.
schedule? What have you tried?
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm answering that question like that, but it's also a useful answer because rather than organizing your life, what I'd like you to do today is organize your car. Just organize your car, or even smaller, organize your glove box. Go in there, take all the receipts out from the mechanic that are old, throw out all the old registrations, throw out the pills of Tylenol that you have in there that have been sitting there for 12 years. I went in the other day. I had old bloody arrow broadheads that had from other hunts. Like take that out, like old registration stickers and like clean it out. Just clean it out. Get a trash can, go in, pull all the trash out of the side panels of your door and in your glove box and center console. Actually pull out the mats and hose them off and vacuum under the mats. Like, see if you have a toolbox, like go through the toolbox, organize it, situate it, clean it. Just doing that alone, not number one, you're going to be much more effective. Number two, you're going to feel productive. So that develops and builds confidence. And then number three, you're going to see what it's like to organize something. Okay, now when you're done with that, go into your office. I don't have to organize this entire office space. I just maybe need to organize my bookshelf. Or I've got a stack. Me personally, they're not there anymore. I've got a couple papers there and a couple of checks here I need to deposit. Well, usually what I do is I stack them all up, and then over time it just builds and builds and builds and builds. So one thing I could do personally is go through and deposit the checks, send some other checks in, file the medical bills where they need to be filed in the right have a filing cabinet, have a filing system. Like just isolate it. And what's the most important thing that needs to be organized right now? Is it your calendar? Is it your phone? Is it your pictures on your phone? Is it packing Tasks. For a trip? Yeah. Like whatever. Just pick something and do that instead of saying, hey, how do you organize life?
Okay. Nathan Fullerton, what is your plan to beat your kids next year at Tug of War?
Holy cow.
What's that workout plan look like? Are you okay emotionally after that loss?
No, I'm actually really like it. I'm torn. It's bittersweet. They beat me. My three boys beat me. I didn't expect that to happen, by the way. I thought, no way.
Yeah, I'm gonna just drag these guys across the grass.
I thought for sure. Yeah. And they beat me like fair and square. My oldest son was saying, Dad, were you even trying? I said, yes, 100%. I would not let you in on purpose. I would never do that in a million years. I don't care how old you are. I would never let you do that. And yeah, they beat me fair and square. So I don't know. At this point, look, I'm not trying to throw in the towel, but they're going to get exponentially bigger than I am. The only thing I can say,
faster than you,
yes.
Bigger at a faster rate than you can.
Yes. Yeah. The only thing that I can say is as I get older and there's a few more gray hairs in my beard is that I can be wiser. I can be smarter. I have more life experience. So I think next year, instead of worrying about my muscles, I'm going to worry about technique and tricks. Like give them a bunch of slack on the rope so they fall and then hurry and pull it. I'm going to use old man wisdom versus strength because I just don't see it happening at this point. It's like, let's work in jujitsu. It's like jujitsu. It's like, you can take a guy that's $190. How much do you weigh, Kip?
195.
Okay, so we're right around the same weight. You take us, and you could we'll use you as an example because you're better. Is take a guy that's 220 or 230 or 250 pounds even. And because you're smarter, jujitsu wise, you're going to beat him. He's going to use all his muscle and all his strength, and you're going to use it against him, and you're going to make him look foolish. You don't need to wait for my
opportunity.
That's right. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to worry too much about my strength and just all up here.
Yeah.
I'm going to get in their heads before the event, like try to fake them out, talk a lot of crap, like get in their head, mess with them, trying to get them to like really work hard. Like I got my strategies. I can't disclose all of them because I'm afraid my oldest listens to the podcast. So,
all right, Caesar Chacon, and he's an educator, at least in his title inside the Foundry. So we'll see if that helps the question. What is the best way to increase net worth? I've had a big setback shortly after joining the Iron Council, and now I'm looking for ways to earn, create, and make more money.
Again, it's so broad. What is the best way to create net worth? I mean, the simple answer is to find out that something will pay. Create something or find something that people will pay for. Like that's the simple. Yeah. If you're asking a broad question, that's a broad answer. I know, but that really is the answer. You have to sell something, right? Or I guess you could invest. There's investment opportunities, but usually that takes a little longer. And especially if you had a big setback, you might not have money to invest in something.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you have a setback, that a little bit implies that you don't have any assets to be able to make an investment. So,
Right. So it's, I don't
hustle.
know it. Yeah. Hustle. Yeah, I guess. Sure. I don't know. Just what I would say is figure out what you're into and find a way to sell it.
Yeah.
Right. If you're into, well, jujitsu is a great, if you're into jujitsu and you're good at it, you're qualified to do it, then start putting together video courses on YouTube.
Yeah.
Hey, here's a couple sweeps, here's a couple passes, here's a couple whatever. Put those on there and see where it goes. Like there's all sorts of companies out there that have done it. Nick Albane Jiu-Jitsu, he's one that does it really well. He's a friend of mine. I've bought in courses like flow charts and uh, there's all sorts of guys that do stuff like that. If it's
Yeah.
building websites, cool. Put that out there. Offer to look at some websites and say, hey, like I'd like to offer a couple of pages for you on your website that I think would help. You need an about us page. You need a start here page. I'll build those out for you for free, just so you can see my work. And if you like it, then maybe there's a couple other pages I can build for you or tweak or adjust for SEO. I'm making stuff up here. If it's photography, if it's painting, like people are doing everything and anything and they're making money doing it. So find out what your thing is and sell it. Another guy just barely was talking about how to organize. Maybe you're really organized. So you put together a
Consultant.
course,
Yeah.
a 10 week course on how to organize effectively and efficiently. Or you even offer to organize people's spaces and environments or their computers and their files, storage, whatever. So many ways to make money, but find out what you're into and then sell it.
Yeah. All right. Brandon Ballard, I have 3 team members at work that have a sky is falling mentality. When one thing goes wrong, they can't seem to pivot and spiral into doomed mental space, making them ineffective at their jobs. How do I coach them to change their mindset and embrace a culture of adaptability?
Man, that's a pretty good question. These are all good questions, kind of hard to answer actually, which I think is what makes it a good question. If you actually have
Yeah.
to think about it. And okay, so I would say for adaptability, number one, don't solve their problems. That might
Yeah.
be the biggest issue. I don't know. I'm just assuming here. But let's say they just throw up their hands like, oh, everything's falling. Oh, the world's coming to an end. And then you rush in like Superman. And you're like, oh, take it easy, guys. Take it. Look, I'm here to save the day. And then you formulate a plan and a strategy. Then what are you training them to do? Complain
Rely on
every
you.
time something
Yeah.
goes wrong. So
Yeah.
one simple thing that you can do is say, hey, guys, look, I know this is stressful. I know it's a high pressure situation right now. We got to get this done. We have a deadline. Client's not happy. Like I get it. Uh, but I also have faith in you. So I'm going to leave you guys with it. And when you come up with an answer, let me know. We'll check back at the end of the day. Good luck, guys. I'm going to lunch. I wouldn't say I'm going to lunch, but you know what I'm saying. And let them figure it out because maybe they come to the conclusion. They're like, oh, crap. Ryan's not, right? He's not going to do it this time. It's kind of like having you remember in high school when you got paired up because you had to do a science project and you always wanted that nerdy girl that sits in the front of the class and asks all the questions. You're like, please be my partner. Please be my partner. Please be my partner. And you get her and you're like, sweet, I don't have to do anything. That's you. You're the nerdy girl in the front of the class if you're trying to come
Yeah.
in and rescue and do it all. So don't be that person. Let them figure it out. And maybe they're like, oh man, Ryan's not going to save us from these issues. So maybe they're actually not that big a deal. That's one conclusion that you can come to. Or maybe they're like, oh no, this is a big deal. Shoot. And he wants us to come up with an answer. Oh yeah. Okay. Well, here's 3. Well, what's the best? Well, we think this is the best. And just let them work through it. They'll come up. It might not be awesome, but they'll start learning to come up with, and then they present that solution to you. And then you work it with them after they've come up. It's like, okay, cool, guys. What about this? And you throw wrenches at it. And they're like, oh, yeah, well, we thought if this, then this. Cool. Okay, you thought that through. What about this? Oh, man, we didn't think about that. Okay, well, how can we address that? And you start working with them. And then gradually you just give them more and more responsibility. It's kind of like that question we were talking about earlier with the fatherhood, rendering yourself obsolete,
Yeah.
putting yourself out of work. That's what great
Yeah.
leaders do.
Yeah. And there's resources online around like transfer of ownership. These guys might be at different levels where you might be a little bit more hand holding and then less hand holding, depending on the level of transfer of ownership that you're wanting to give them. The other thing I'd add is just have a positive attitude about it. I know it's such a cliche thing, but I love it when Jocko does his whole good thing. Well, I know what you're going to say, right? And it's like, you're just going to say good. It's
Yeah.
like, kind of have some positive environment like it. Like, dude, boss, we have a major problem. This is a pain. I don't even know if we can figure out. Awesome. Dude, let's do this. Yeah. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of exciting. Like, at least I get excited thinking about, man, like stakes are high. Let's figure this out. This is cool
Yeah.
stuff. Right.
Yeah.
And bring a more positive approach to the challenge versus the challenge being such a negative thing.
Right. Yeah. Agreed.
Might help anyway.
Yeah.
Cool.
Cool.
All right. Scott, Jared A.
Let's take a couple more, Kip, by the way.
Okay. I think this is actually the last question that we have for today.
Let's take this one
have
then.
you ever considered creating and selling a challenge coin for Order of Man or IC?
No, because you can't. What's challenging about buying a coin?
Yeah.
It's called a challenge coin. Is it challenging to buy it off the store? Like you didn't do anything special.
What Scott doesn't know is there are Order of Man challenge coins.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And because it has to be earned. So I appreciate the sentiment, but
yeah,
the answer is no. I'll never sell a challenge coin because it's not a challenge coin. It's just you bought a little token, and I wouldn't call it a challenge coin.
Yeah.
So coins are to be earned through doing hard things, through effort, and we do have those. And some guys do have those. So there's your answer to that. But I don't know. I get burned out on the whole challenge, like the military challenge coin thing. Like everybody, and they're cool, it's like, but really, I got a bunch sitting in the drawer, and I have a bunch sitting right up there. And guess which ones are in the drawer? The ones that people gave me that don't mean anything. Guess which ones are right there? The ones that actually have meaning behind them. The ones that I earned from my time in service. But the ones that people just gave me because I didn't do anything, those are all in the drawer right there. Or I give them to my kids. So it defeats the purpose. That's all I'm saying. But maybe I'm just a stick in the mud too. That could be.
You're a grumpy old man is what you are.
Totally. I'm sorry, guys. I'm not sorry. I'm very practical and pragmatic, and I know that sometimes it comes across as just like being a dud, but at the same time, no, if you're going to call it a challenge coin, then do something challenging and maybe I'll give you one.
There you go. There's your call to action. If you've done something really challenging, ping Mr. Mickler on Instagram and Twitter at Ryan Mickler and let him know why you deserve a challenge coin. Maybe he'll send one your way.
Please don't do that. Now I'm gonna have thousands of messages and emails from people. Well, I did this thing, and but I did this. Like, I don't care about any of that.
Do it anyway. It'd be funny.
No, don't. I'll block you. I will block you guys. I'll say
the Masculinity Manifesto. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I just said I'll congratulate you and then I'll block you.
Okay, don't do it, guys. Yeah, don't do that. So a couple call to action. We mentioned the Iron Council to learn more about the IC and to get notified when we open that back up for enrollment. Go to orderofman.com/Iron Council. The Ryan's second book, the Masculinity Manifesto, is out and available. So to buy that book wherever books are sold. And I assume that you probably have some signed versions at store.orderofman.com.
You assume incorrectly.
All right. Don't buy them there, then.
I do have some. They're just not signed yet because we've been so busy with the event, but they will be on the store within the next couple of weeks.
Okay, there you go. So if you want a signed version, stay tuned and go to store.orderofman.com.
That's right. Cool. Well, thanks, Kip. Thanks, guys. Great questions. Appreciate you guys in the Iron Council asking those questions. Hopefully we gave you some answers to at least consider or to ridicule and mock and make fun of. But whatever, hopefully it was at least somewhat entertaining for you guys and educational. We'll be back on Friday for our Friday field notes. But until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.